Do that. Looks like we are recording now. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to get started today and see. Sorry. Yeah, sure why that's not working. Okay. We need a motion to have this meeting done virtually. Mark, you want to go ahead and do that for us?
I move that the items on the meeting agenda constitute essential business of this council. Meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans, considering the COVID-19 outbreak, and any rule conflicting with governor's executive order permitting electronic meetings be suspended.
Do I have a second? Second by Vicky Batcher. Thank you. Abigail is going to do a roll call vote. Please state that you're present, whether you approve the motion, and if you have any conflicts of interest, please.
Elena Boyer.
Yes, here and no conflicts.
April Calvin.
Present. Yes, and the Salvation Army is a ESG and CoC funded agency.
Ashley Oswald. Not present. Ryan Ellis. Not present. Alex Smith. I see you, Alex, but you may be muted. Alex Smith.
Present, yes, and no conflict.
Thank you. Michelle Hall.
Yes, present, and I do have a conflict of interest. I work for an agency that's CoC funded.
Don Diener.
Present, yes, no conflict.
Norman Humber. Not present. Catherine Knowles. Not present. Sheila Decker.
Present, yes, and I am a contract vendor with the Salvation Army.
Mark Overlock.
Present, yes, and I have a conflict. My wife works with Catholic Charities and they receive HUD funding.
Mary Catherine Rand. Not present. Beth Shin.
Present, yes, no conflicts.
Freddie O'Connell. Not present. Sandra Sepulveda.
Present, yes, and yes, I'm a board member at Safe Haven.
Aaron Evans. Not present. Will Connolly.
Present, yes, and yes, we have conflicts. Park Center receives Metro funding.
Paula Foster.
Present, yes, and my wife works for Nashville Cares and they receive ESG funding.
Laura Bermudez.
Present, yes, no conflicts.
Vicky Batcher.
Present, yes, no conflicts.
Wendell Seagroves. Not present. Jeff Gibson.
Present, yes, and I'm on the board at Room in the Inn.
Charles Strobel.
Present, and I'm part of Room in the Inn also.
And Tom Turner. Not present. Did anyone else come in after I went through the list from the Planning Council?
This is Ryan Ellis. I did. So,
Oh, great.
yeah. So present, yes, no.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Abigail. We are going to move on to have a moment of silence for people that we have lost. I think you guys all know that this has been a very difficult couple of weeks for all of us in the service provider community. So please listen as I read their names. Norris Kenner, Jerry Montana Pascal, Philip Cornett, Fred Richards, Robert Lasseter, Jeff Richardson, Hans Pollock, Melissa Conquest, Ralph Freeman, Franklin Don Nash, Preston P. Woods, Eduardo Alvarez, and an unidentified male. All right, thank you all very much. So we're going to get this meeting started today by a story of progress, and I believe Will Conley at Park Center is going to share some things with us today. So Will, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Paula. I'm happy to be here. Grateful to be with you all. So yeah, Park Center, some of you might know, Park Center actually owns a bunch of affordable housing in Nashville for people diagnosed with a mental illness. And so we own about 21 residential properties. And that was something that I didn't even know when I worked for Park Center years ago. It was kind of like a secret. It seemed like, but so we want to do more. We want to provide more affordable housing, either through building it, which is really tough, and we're trying to build our capacity internally to actually develop affordable housing if the opportunity arises. But we're also, trying to increase access to units through other means like master leasing and some other strategies. So historically, we've also had quite a few barriers to get into our housing that were basically imposed by the organization. So we've required income and employment. We've been required sobriety. We've at times required insurance in a state that hasn't expanded Medicaid. So while the housing is great, we've kind of again just had a bunch of barriers, and I haven't always served people with the highest needs. So we're thanks to David Langelmartin, who many of you all know. He's the director of all of our housing stuff here at Park Center. He and I and a bunch of other folks are working together to try to increase the number of units and also lower barriers to our housing units, which is just extremely difficult, even if you have the passion and energy to do that, because you need more, money. We've had to restructure our departments to prepare for this. But it's great work. And so anyway, the success story recently is we haven't built more housing, but we've partnered with a developer to master lease 14 brand new SRO units in the Madison area. These are apartments that will be permanent. They are permanent. We've had folks moving into those units over the last few days, and it's just been fun to witness people moving in. It's always a good time. And these units are different for us because they don't have most of those barriers. So for the first time in our 37-year history at Park Center, we're not requiring income, all the stuff, sobriety, all the stuff that I just mentioned that we have in the past. So that's a huge deal for us. And we hope to identify more units that we can, master lease, because it's, it doesn't require all the energy to actually develop the property, but we do get access and try to target those units to people who need it the most. So that's a little success story from the Park Center side of things, and appreciate all of our partners who have helped with the move-ins, because it's been definitely a community effort. All of you know how much effort it takes, how much time it takes to help someone get into their new space, and all the furniture and assistance that's required there. So thanks, Paula, for the time.
No, Will, thank you very much. And that's very exciting. Very, very, very exciting news. Anytime we can reduce barriers to housing for folks, it makes me very happy. I'm sure it does everyone else as well. All right, so let's move right into our next agenda item, which is the Homeless Impact Division's report. Judy, you want to take the lead on that, please?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm going to start with the vaccination plan for all people experiencing homelessness. So the goal for our community is to offer the vaccine, COVID vaccine, to 100% of the people experiencing homelessness by Memorial Day. Our community is on track with that. Shelter, and this includes shelters and outdoors. So the public health department worked with Nashville Rescue Mission, Room in the Inn, and the Metro shelters, especially during the winter storm. And I think we mentioned that at the last meeting, to get people vaccinated. And also on that note, we had social services were able to coordinate with neighborhood health to bring the vaccine on the last night that the overflow shelter was open, also to the people that utilized that. And then the outdoor coordination began with public health department, neighborhood health, and St. Thomas Ascension. And I cannot stress and thank enough of the work that Brian Hale with neighborhood health has put into putting that plan together. We were helping coordinate, but he really is stepping in, coordinating with everybody on who's going to which encampments, and updating everybody and keeping everybody posted on the latest news. As you've heard this month, or this week actually, that the one-shot Johnson & Johnson vaccine is being held off right now. The CDC and FDA are temporarily pausing it to evaluate some concerns there. So Brian immediately informed the entire community with the service providers that, he's rescheduling and the health providers are rescheduling some of the planned vaccinations, but still going to reschedule those and move forward. The message is very clear, and get vaccinated. Get vaccinated. The vaccine, Pfizer and Moderna, are out there. The efforts will continue with that. And so the way that it's set up with the schedule is larger encampments have one health provider go out and partner with a service provider to, one, alert people ahead of time and encourage them with, and provide them with information ahead of an event before the vaccination, and then that is going out and happening. Again, in addition to all of that, neighborhood health is taking walk-ups at their downtown clinic for anybody on Fridays. I mean, it is a really well organized effort to offer the vaccine to 100% of people experiencing homelessness, provide them the education and all of that by Memorial Day. We're not ending it by Memorial Day because, as we all know, it's not going to be everybody's going to be vaccinated, but the effort is going on. It's moving on, and everybody has had a chance to be reached and reaching people where they are. Nashville was also invited to present to the HUD Region 4 about our vaccination plan, so others can learn from what we're doing here. Here, I'm also generous to give a presentation there as well. This ties into metro shelters at the fairground. There's a phased closing. I'm going to send out a press release on that. That is planned with all the partners involved. I will send after this right out a press release that was shared, and it's going out. The closure is scheduled for July 1st in a very considerate planned effort with all the partners. And I cannot stress enough how much has been done at those shelters. They have been open for more than a year. Over 1,300 people were sheltered at the different metro shelters. At times, Metro Social Services was running 5 shelters, including the overflow shelters on those days. Regularly, it's been 4 shelters. Over 130,000 meals were provided. People were, housing navigation was provided and is still going on. Case management is offered to every single person. 76 people were successfully moved to housing. There is a lot of transportation that's being provided so people can get to appointments, social security assistance, employment assistance, food stamps. Just a lot of work has gone in, and also great thank you to all the partners who have helped with that as well. Another update is around the flood. There have been several organizations. There were especially 2 encampments that were completely swept away, as you know, and tragically lives were lost in one of the encampments. And the following partners have stepped in very quickly, and that's Metro Social Services, Open Table Nashville, People Living Nashville Park Center, and really come together to put the people from these encampments into motels for 30 days, just to give them a break, just to get over the trauma, and really immediately started focusing on the services and the housing process. And as Bill shared, it's amazing that yesterday some people have actually moved into housing. So the goal is to have everybody connected. After the 30 days, I mean, the Red Cross has provided materials so people, if they, would have replacements of tents and materials. But the goal is really to keep that really laser focus housing placement and working on housing with the people and using the stay in motels to make these connections. We are also working on continue working on a landlord engagement. There is going to be a joint press announcement and push to, as we are moving with rapid rehousing and as we are getting hopefully more Section 8 vouchers, which will come in, and you're going to hear an update from that later on. We're really continuing the landlord engagement push. We are having, through ESG, over $80,000 that we're using for landlord incentive, for landlord mitigation fund, to pay for potential damages above the security deposits for landlords, and also if there is a gap in if somebody is moving out or relocates, that we can hold units for up to 2 months and fill them with another person through the coordinated entry approach. So that is going on as well. You will hear more about that in the coming days and weeks. And then I'm going to give it over real quickly to Shadley for a data update. And Yeah. So
Good morning, everybody.
Okay, good.
Good morning. So this morning we wanted to share some good news, some updates from HMIS in the last month around progress in improving data collection in HMIS. So last month you all approved the initiative to more proactively engage street outreach providers so that we as a community can increase the data collection from street outreach providers. So following that meeting, our team held a meeting with street outreach supervisors and basically just talked about sort of where we are now, where we're hoping to go, talked about the importance of that data and how it can be used in our community. It was a really good conversation. It's been kind of cool to see the tone around HMIS shift. We saw that agencies that are actively participating sort of spearheaded like the reasons why we should all be doing this. So that was awesome. We also learned about some of the barriers that exist around staff time, et cetera. And so we are continuing to try to work closely with HUD technical assistance, as well as learning from communities that have already sort of done this process to think through best practices versus where we are as a starting point now. And somewhere in the middle, that's where we'll hopefully, be working towards. So following that conversation, we actually onboarded 2 new projects that are going to be entering street outreach data, which is super exciting. So I want to give them a big shout out. That is People Loving Nashville and Nashville Street Project. So both of these agencies are fairly new to the HMIS family. And so it's very exciting to see their eager sort of readiness to contribute to the big picture. So we're very grateful for that and looking forward to seeing how that data improves our big picture understanding about outdoor homelessness in Nashville. One of the gaps that we haven't talked about as directly, but we are going to continue to explore is the way that it's a project type similar to street outreach called support services only. So that's going to be agencies that provide a more specific service. So a good example would be Shower the People. I also want to shout them out. They provide mobile shower services around town in encampments and other places where people are experiencing outdoor homelessness. They're amazing, and they are entering data into HMIS. They are not required to do so for any grant purpose, but they wanted to contribute to the big picture. So we don't want to lose sort of the support service only project type because they also shed a lot of insight into outdoor homelessness. So Shower the People might be providing services to people outside that are not ready to engage with a street outreach worker. That information, though, is still really critical for us as a community to understand the system, to have and work towards an unduplicated number of people experiencing outdoor homelessness. So we're going to continue to explore what that looks like and engage with those agencies as well. This sort of bleeds into a committee update, but the data committee asked me to create an FAQ, sort of like a one-pager about street outreach. And that is going to be distributed at some point and is meant to let everyone be an expert on street outreach so that as a community, we're all having this conversation. Everyone can use that information to try to engage agencies as well around street outreach data. So last but not least, this is outside of the street outreach update, but I also wanted to give a shout out to Safe Haven Family Shelter. They provide emergency shelter services, rapid rehousing services, and in the last few months in the conversation as HMIS has sort of picked up speed, they reached out to us and they wanted to set up a project as well to collect data that they are not required to enter, but they wanted to be available to the community. So wanted to give a big shout out to them as well. That's what we're hoping for across the community. So happy to answer any questions if there are any.
And we do have a few hands up, so I'm just going to go down the list on my little screen here. Elena Boria, you have a question?
Sure. I feel bad. I think Freddie and Mark were before me, but I think mine's quick. It was related to Judy's update, and it's more just me being curious. But do we know that the vaccine distribution, are those from the Department of Public Health program or the HHS program? And you might not know. I'm not sure.
Sorry, I do not know. All I know on the local, it's the partners on the health provider side are the Public Health Department, Neighborhood Health, and St. Thomas Ascension.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
I do not
Thank
know.
you. No, I was just curious because we're having just conversations with our health centers that are part of the program that are getting the vaccines from HHS, but just curious. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Freddie?
Morning, thanks. Yeah, mine is more for Judy broadly, and I guess it touches on two things in her update. One is the planned closure of the fairground shelter, and the other is the flooding. I'm still puzzled by Metro's overall, I guess I would characterize it as refusal to use federal dollars for hotel vouchers. I guess I'd like an update maybe from Judy, or I believe Hannah is also on the call from the mayor's office today, as to if we intend to, I think there are now a variety of sources here. I think FEMA has some dollars that they're providing to municipalities, and then I believe the American Rescue Plan, but even going back to the CARES Act, there have been a lot of dollars that Metro has chosen not to use for hotel vouchers. And I'm interested in if we intend to change our approach there, our policy focus. I just, the flooding to me, it seemed like it included too many preventable deaths. And I think if we were willing to actually use dollars that are available to get people into even transitional housing or temporary housing, we could better serve the community we're here to serve. And I'd love some perspective on this, please.
So I will start real quickly, and then if Hannah, you can add something too. So one of the things, especially with the flooding, we are looking at how to utilize FEMA dollars if there's a declaration. So we're looking at the different, we have conversations on what we can do with reimbursement for motel vouchers. We do have these conversations right now internally with Metro. I do not have a full response yet on all of the front, but that's what we're looking at. So yeah, I will need to follow up once I have better response. Anything you want to add, Hannah, by any chance? I think that's pretty much summed it up.
Nope, you summed it up. I'm happy to assist in tracking down any of that updated information that you need from our side.
Well, I guess let me ask a follow-up then, which is does Metro intend to try to use hotel vouchers? I know this has come up throughout the COVID process, and it seemed as though, yes, we've been doing the ESG process very effectively overall. And I think I just want to understand from an availability perspective, I don't think that's the issue. I just wonder if there are reasons we have not done this prior. If we see the fairground shelter closing and we go through anything else that could be severe weather, it would seem to me we would want to be prepared to do this.
And that's part of the conversations we're having right now. So one of the things we're doing is looking as the cold weather season is over. So we're looking at that whole plan on next year's cold weather season, but really expanding on having the conversation of what all of this needs to involve, especially with this year with the different emergencies. It's more of what happens when there are different disasters or emergencies happening. So it's an overall conversation that we're having. How do these funds link in? How can we, and also building up on the rapid rehousing efforts that we have going on, how do we tie everything into that end goal of getting people into housing? So I would say we're really looking and taking a bigger picture on reviewing on what all these dollar sources are looking at. I actually had a peer city call yesterday also with Atlanta to just learn what they're doing and how they're viewing things and having these peer city calls as well. So I do not, I'm sorry, right now I do not have the best concrete answers yet, but hope so.
Okay, I guess maybe I would ask specifically for an update around our approach to the policy of hotel vouchers for next meeting.
Okay, yeah.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Freddie. Mark?
This is to Judy, I think, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Judy, but it occurred to me that as we compile a list of private landlords willing to work with us on rapid rehousing efforts, you mentioned that we're going to provide some extra money up front as part of the deposit for anticipated damages. I think it'd be great if we could also start compiling a list. Maybe MDHA has something like this, almost of preferred providers of people or companies that are willing to come into an apartment and fix it back up at sort of less maybe than the high profit, very expensive contractors. If it'd be, sort of an Angie's List, I'd love to see that because it can get very, very expensive to rehab an apartment that's been damaged by a tenant.
So I just want to ask a question. I'm sorry. Why are we assuming that people who are experiencing homelessness are going to damage apartments when they move into them? Just a question.
One of the things I want to add with looking at especially that piece of the mitigation fund for damages, looking at other cities, a lot of times there very little use of it. It's more the incentive of having it on kind of that security for landlord that can be attractive for them rather than them actually using it a whole lot. So yeah.
Then why don't we just, I'm sorry, why don't we just educate the landlords that, they're putting tenants in their apartment. These tenants are just like everybody else. Why are we going to assume that it's going to make them feel better to know that we'll pay for the damages if they damage it? Because of course, these people, I'm sorry, that kind of flies all over me. Sorry.
That's part of the whole, what the messaging is. That's part of the whole landlord engagement team. That's part of what they do with the upfront outreach to landlords. All of that needs to go into a full packet. Yes. And Mark, I've took a note on that, just also for something to just look at.
And to return to Freddie's concern about the unspent money for hotels, I'm agreeing with him. Something needs to be done. I think we left his question just on the table as to do. Now, I would think the first thing that we would need is an itemized statement of the budget item, and we would have a more objective view of how much of these hotel dollars have been sitting in our own cash book, but needs to be expended. Is that, Freddie, something that would be what you would want?
I guess so. I mean, my sense is I've heard reports for now the better part of a year that we've got hotels that are willing to participate in a program, in a voucher-like program. And apart from the ESG process, which is, it is great. We're not doing the short-term piece of this that is keeping people out of the elements, or there was a lot of discussion about preferring hoteling to a congregate shelter, which is what we wound up with, for better or for worse. We've kind of muddled through the year with that, but I still feel like from anything through the end of the pandemic, as we kind of get to a May target for 100% vaccine availability and among the unhoused versus further severe weather, whether it's more flooding, tornadoes, what have you, these dollars are available. We're not using them, and I'm perplexed as to why. And so I think, Charlie, I don't know. I guess this isn't for me a question of data so much as a question of intent, and that's what I'm trying to get to the bottom of.
Thank you, Freddie. April, Calvin, I think you have your hand up.
I was trying to find the unmute button. Paula, I think you're right on target as far as landlord incentive language. Through our ESG process, we've been trying to use more of language like their tenants, instead of their residents, and, more housing language that we would use with normal people as opposed to because they are experiencing homelessness. The only issue with our community is, there's some historical stuff, maybe, I don't know, however many years ago, seems like yesterday, but when we kind of started a housing first push, there were some landlords that maybe were not fully prepared or prepped on, our population and or anyways, you guys know the history, right? So we've had to be really creative with them, with our new landlords now, and using some of the same language of what you would use with the normal tenant and what you would use with the normal person, as they are human. We don't define anyone else by their housing status. I don't say, Paula, you're housed, and April, you're homeless. So I think that that's kind of helped. But sometimes we do have to use an incentive, whether it is first month, last month's rent up front, a higher deposit based on background. So sometimes using the incentive word does help a little bit, just to ease the reluctancy of the landlord.
Thank you, April. Vicky, you had your hand up, but it went down. Did you want to say something?
Yes, about what she was just referring to about the private landlords. Over the years, it's changed so much with private landlords. They don't, they look at the paper, they look at the application, they don't look at the person. Would it help to have people who were homeless meet these landlords, have them get a chance to get to know them? Would any of that help? I mean, we're doing it on a more personal level, right? With the rapid rehousing and the landlord incentives. What's wrong with having some of those candidates for those units meet the landlords and talk to them? Hey, we're regular people. We're not going to lunge out at anybody or anything. We're regular, normal people. Is that what these landlords need to feel more confident?
Thank you, Vicky. And that's somewhat of a rhetorical question. We're not sure. So, all right. Anything else for Judy?
One quick thing. So you saw Hannah leave. She apologizes. She just texted me. She sincerely apologizes. She has to go to a meeting that she cannot miss, and she's here for any questions and follow-up questions for us.
Thank you, Judy. All right, then. Moving on, Susie, I think it's your turn. Good luck.
This is going to be very brief. I'm just going to cover the continuum of care competition that is expected this year. Work is basically centered at the performance evaluation committee level. They have reviewed a housing first assessment tool. They will be reviewing my revised renewal application for the local agencies that already have a project that's funded. And I am working with the agencies that do have funded projects, getting their annual performance report numbers for the year ended September 30th of 2020, which we think is going to be the performance year that HUD will be looking at when it looks at the performance of all of these agencies. And then I'm sending those numbers that I've put in some spreadsheets back to those agencies for confirmation that I've translated the numbers correctly from their reports into what we will see as a scorecard in the competition locally. And no notice from HUD about when that the funding will, the process, the competition will start. But when we get that news, we'll send that along to everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Susie. Any questions for Susie? All right, then. So we have an action item. There's a request from Urban Housing Solutions about housing conversion. Who's going to explain this to everyone so that we can know what we need to do? Susie, is that you? No?
It is not me.
It's Kelsey.
I can explain that from the urban housing side. At least I'm not sure if the CoC process.
Thank you, Kelsey. If you would explain what's happening, what the request is, that would be great.
Sure. I know that we had sent out some slides, and I can share my screen if it's possible to make me a presenter. I always find that visuals help me. So if that is technically possible, that would be great.
Hold on one second.
Great. Thanks, Paul. My name is Kelsey Osman. I'm with Urban Housing Solutions and am joined today by Tracy Patton and Kevin Clavin on our team. So I will run through this set of slides and just ask Tracy and Kevin to jump in as I inevitably miss something, because this is a complicated process. So please bear with us. So this is related to Mercury Quartz and Rex 2, which is a new project for us. So I'm sure most, if not all of you, are familiar with Mercury Quartz. I don't know how many of you have been there recently, but the kind of big picture why is that Mercury Quartz is in need of major redevelopment. The infrastructure, the buildings are old. It's expensive and really difficult to fix things as they break. And it's really not serving its highest and best use for our residents or for the community. So our goal is to go beyond what we could do with just a renovation and really redevelop the property. We also recognize how important Mercury Quartz is, not just for us as an agency, but for the community. And so we're taking a very careful look at this and have really been talking about it since I joined the team in 2017. So where we're at right now, we are going to be taking our 100 SRO units through a RAD process, which is the same process that MDHA is using with the Envision projects. So the short story is that this process will enable us to replace one for one all of those SROs with brand new 1-bedroom units. So they'll be full 1-bedroom apartments with full kitchens. We know that that's a really important thing for our residents that we've heard consistently. Those brand new buildings will also be fully physically accessible, which is not something we can currently offer at Mercury Quartz. And we'll maintain that long-term affordability for those existing units that we're replacing one for one and increasing the density at Mercury Quartz. So that'll allow us to serve a broader range of residents while still maintaining that priority and preference for our current folks. So I'm going to walk through the two kind of components of the actual development and then run through the impact on residents. So in order to, Mercury Quartz is occupied. So in order to start redevelopment there, we need to be able to relocate people. So our first step in that is adding a new building at Rex Quartz, which is at 331 Plus Park Boulevard, just a little bit farther down Murfreesboro Pike. So there's currently 2 buildings and we'll be adding a third. So it'll be 70 new 1-bedroom apartments, on-site offices for staff, community room, laundry room. Again, those units will be full 1-bedrooms, elevator accessible, and all of those will have private balconies or porches because the current buildings on site do. So this is what we are anticipating. We are currently in we just received our building permits. We're working through this RAD conversion and hoping to start construction on that in the fall, which will be about a 13-month process. So once we're able to move folks into that building, we'll be able to start at Mercury Quartz. Again, this is going to be a long-term project, but we are starting in the back of the site so that we can maintain access from Murfreesboro, which is our only driveway in the site. So that first building will be in the back here. We're temporarily calling it Urban Flats, for lack of a better brand identity. But that building will have 130 one-bedroom apartments. 40 of those will be the remaining SROs. And so I'll get to that income breakdown in a second. But again, just looking at timing, we won't be able to start anything actually on site at Mercury Courts until Rex 2 is complete. So this is where it starts to get really complicated. Mercury Courts is maybe the most complex project we could have imagined. So currently on site, there are 100 of these SRO units through the mod rehab program. And we will basically be breaking that into two pieces. So the first step will be converting 60 of those to PBRA and moving those 60 to Rex 2. And then there will be 10 non-PBRA units in that 70-unit building. So that's our first new building at Rex 2. And then the remaining 40 will again convert to PBRA and stay on site in the new building at Mercury Courts, in addition to 90 other income restricted units. So those
Kelsey,
SROs.
I'm sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt you, but for those folks who may not be familiar with the alphabet soup, can you make sure that you explain what those initials stand for?
Yeah, sorry. So the SRO program is the single room occupancy. So those right now are just converted motel rooms essentially. They're very small. Some of them have a kitchen or small kitchenette. And so they will be converting to a PBRA, a project-based rental assistance. So residents will continue to pay what they currently pay. It'll just essentially be called something else, and it'll function a little bit differently from our internal side, but the resident experience will be the same. One of the biggest questions we've gotten from residents in these conversations is about utilities. At Rex, they'll continue to be included in the rent. So again, resident experience will be the same. In the new building at Mercury Courts, residents will have their own electric bill, but there will be a utility allowance baked into the rent to accommodate that. We also have several residents on site who are not in an SRO who have their own subsidy, whether that's HOPWA, Housing Opportunities for People with AIDS, SHP, Supportive Housing Program, some regular, tenant-based Section 8, and then some residents who are just paying our UHS floor rent. So
Kelsey,
those, yeah.
Sorry, if I can jump in. Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin with Urban Housing Solutions. I work with Kelsey on our development team. Another part of the alphabet soup, SHP, that is what we call the Supportive Housing Program, and that's actually through the funds received from the CoC to provide supportive housing to folks that are working with partnering agencies within the CoC. So.
Thanks, Kevin. So again, all of those programs, especially if they're resident-based, will continue. So no matter where folks go, obviously that's attached to them, not to the unit. And that's really the biggest difference between the SRO process and non-SRO. So a couple of key points. Again, this is a long process. Nobody is moving yet. The earliest that anyone would relocate to the new building at Rex is late 2022. As our residents who move to Rex or who stay on site and move into the new building there, that first urban flats building will maintain their rent level. Nobody will be asked to move without having a place to go. Urban Housing Solutions' mission is to support our residents, and so we're really committed to making sure that everybody has an appropriate option, regardless of their current housing assistance. All the SROs and really all of the units, period, will be upgraded to full one-bedroom units, again with a full kitchen and elevator access. Our new PBRA contract, which is what we would convert the SROs, the single room occupancy, will convert to those project-based rental assistance. That contract will maintain a homeless preference. So again, knowing that that functions in coordination with the coordinated entry system to match folks with those units, that process will continue. And then UHS will be responsible for relocation expenses. So we'll be helping coordinate, getting folks boxes and tape and hiring movers and making sure that folks are able to get to where they will be going. one of the other questions that has come up, the SROs on site at Mercury Courts are furnished when residents move in, and that was a concern for residents. So we have also committed to building that into the project, and we'll be providing a basic furniture package in the new apartments.
What is your policy regarding sobriety?
Tracy, do you want to? It's outside of my expertise.
Oh, maybe I'm trying to start my video. So Urban Housing Solutions, all of our properties are clean and sober living communities. That's all 32 of our properties. So we don't drug test residents once they move in. You do have to have a drug test prior to moving in. But all of our communities we promote and enhance sober living communities.
And specific to this process, and this is part of the slide actually, residents who are currently living with us cannot be rescreened. They won't be reapplying. If they go to Rex and they want to move back, they would reapply. And, you know, we've been really clear with residents about how that process would work along the way. But that's part of this right to remain or return. So they're currently a resident and they will continue to be a resident if they want. They, again, have the right to relocation assistance, the right to participate in a resident organization, which we have not heard a lot of interest about, and then this ongoing right to grievance procedures. We did also receive clarification that the Uniform Relocation Act, or URA, will apply. And that's not just for residents in those SRO units that are converting, it's for all residents at Mercury Courts who are going to be impacted by demolition and construction. So again, at least 90 days notice, working with residents, and this is something that Tracy and I will be working on once we've gotten through this mandatory HUD process, doing one-on-one meetings with every resident at Mercury Courts to make sure that they're, you know, fully informed about their options and what that process will look like, and maintaining really strong communication along the way. Part of that RAD process, there's required resident meetings. So we had to have, especially due to COVID, we were trying to keep numbers small. So we did a series of meetings about a month ago, and then another one just this past week, giving time in between to collect any additional feedback. And we've responded to any questions. There was a lot of just clarification, but again, things like that furniture question came up, and so that's sort of been baked into our process now. So we had those small group meetings. We had set up a hotline for residents to call and leave a message if they had additional questions, knowing that folks might not be comfortable speaking up in person, and then or you know, comfortable being in person at all right now. So again, Tracy and our community housing services team and our development team will be working one-on-one with residents to establish a really clear matrix of where everybody is going. And fortunately, we have about 1.5 years before that will really come into play. So I know that was a lot, but happy to answer any questions.
Well, the question that I have, bottom line, after everything is completed, how many new units will we have versus how many old units will we lose?
So so the 100 SROs will be replaced one for one in this first phase, I guess, which is the 70 units at Rex 2 and the 130 units at Urban Flats. It'll be a net gain of affordable units. Those will be at more of like the 60 to 80% of area median income. And then there will be 2 more buildings in theory planned, and we haven't gotten into the specifics of these 2 buildings yet, but those could be up to 250 additional units. So it'll be a net increase of affordable housing while maintaining those current 100 at the lowest income level.
Well, congratulations.
Great. Vicky Batcher, you have a question?
It's more of a kudos. Thank you for getting this on the bus line. I just looked up the website and saw that it was on the bus line because I know a lot of affordable housing isn't on the bus line. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Vicky. So one of the questions that I think I have right now.
I have another comment.
Okay, Charlie.
I would just want to remind everybody when the SROs, the Mercury Court changed and was first developed, was a haven for drug dealers and a lot of abuse. That's the reason for asking the question about some kind of policy regarding sobriety.
Thanks, Charlie. All right, so here's the big question that I have, and thank you for your presentation. It's great. I'm very excited. It's got someone who has worked at Mercury Courts in the past. I'm all for the renovation there, right, Tracy Patton?
Yes.
But
Very much so.
Tell us really quickly why you are bringing this to us. What is it that you need from us, and what can we do for you?
Yeah, so part of, again, this HUD process with the RAD, RAD, it stands for Rental Assistance Demonstration. And so part of that is consulting with the CoC about this project because it does impact folks who come through the CES and other funding related to the CoC. So I think Brent had sent a sort of sample letter of support, if that is something that the CoC is willing to provide, that we could include with our application. But it's really, consulting with you all to make sure that this is aligned with the broader plans, to see if there's any other areas of concern that we need to be looking at, and ideally to get that letter of support.
So you're looking for us to approve to give you a letter of support to move forward with this project. Okay, thank you. Beth Shan, you have a question?
So I'm all for all the affordable housing we can get. You're talking about the new affordable units being at 80% of area median or 60% of area median. Is there any way to have some of them down at 30%? So 60% and 80% won't help our folks who are currently unhoused.
So the first phase will most likely be developed. We've received a Barnes grant for that first building and are planning on applying for tax credits. In our most recent tax credit project, which is under construction right now, we're using the income averaging tool or feature. So that allows us to serve down to 40% and up to 80%, and they sort of balance out from a financial standpoint. So that's definitely something that we're interested in pursuing. And then we've also been able to layer in on other projects, project-based vouchers, and other forms of rental assistance. We accept Section 8, so those other ways to sort of support residents at the below 40%. We have not, I'll just be honest, I haven't really modeled the two future buildings here to know exactly what funding sources we'll need to pull in, and there's a lot on the table. But in that first building, the urban flats, there will be those 40 PBRA, project-based rental assistance, and then the remainder will be at the 60 to 80, but that formula is not fixed. So we could potentially have additional 40% AMI units if we balance them out at the 80%. So I don't know if that was a helpful answer.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Other questions for Kelsey and the team from Urban Housing? All right, thank you, Kelsey and Tracy and Kevin, for your presentation. Really appreciate that. So if there are no further questions, I would entertain a motion to approve supplying a letter of support to Urban Housing for the RAD conversion.
Mark Overlock moved. So moved.
Mark Overlock has moved. Do I have a second?
Second, Tom.
Tom, thank you, Tom. All right, are there any other questions, concerns, comments? All right, and hearing none, Abigail, would you take us through a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Vicky Batcher,
Yes.
Elena Boyer,
Yes.
Alex Smith, Alex Smith, we'll come back. April Calvin,
Yes.
Beth Shin,
Yes.
Charles Strobel,
Yes.
Don Diener,
Yes.
Aaron Evans, Aaron Evans, we'll come back. Freddie O'Connell,
Aye.
Jeff Gibson,
Yes.
Laura Bermudez,
Yes.
Mark Overlock,
Yes.
Michelle Hall,
Yes.
Paula Foster,
Yes, ma'am.
Sheila Decker,
Yes.
Tom Turner,
Yes.
Will Connolly,
Yes.
and let me circle back, Alex Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. And Aaron Evans.
All right. Well, thank you and congratulations, Mercury Court, Urban Housing Solutions. I think this is fabulous. Good luck. Please always let us know if there's anything else that this body can do to support you.
Thank you, everybody.
So next up would be Heather Dillashaw, our resident, non-resident member of this body.
Thanks, Paula. I'm gonna just go quickly through a couple of things. I'm not gonna show slides since I think it's easier just to talk through it. Housing is going well, as many of you know. Y'all have housed over 300 people just with the ESG Cares dollars. So that is enormous progress. So 300 people in permanent housing since we started in October, November, well on the way to the original goal of 400, and we will surpass that goal, which is exciting. We've got more dollars coming as well. We're going to be getting some additional dollars through the state's ESG dollars through THDA, over $1 million more ESG dollars that we're going to be able to put into play for housing and supportive services. So that's super exciting. Yeah, so things there are going well, and I know you all have had a rough couple of weeks, and in spite of all that, folks are still getting housed, and folks are working hard. We're working the next kind of phase of that, which we're going to start working on toward the end of this week, is doing a more focused encampment / unsheltered homelessness to housing move to do some mapping of encampments, looking at how we do a more concerted, coordinated effort for outreach there and getting folks into the housing pipeline directly from all those places, right? We've done a good job focusing on downtown, but there are people everywhere, right? So we need to expand that effort some. I want to say a little bit about, well, I'll stop there. If there are any questions about that, then I'm going to talk about the American Rescue Plan. Any questions?
No questions, so. All right.
Great.
We're talking a bunch this morning, Heather.
American Rescue Plan. Lots of amazing stuff coming through the American Rescue Plan. I'm talking about this to folks as the housing game changer that I've been waiting for 20 years. We're actually seeing dollars come in through the home program and through public housing authorities focused on folks who are homeless at levels we haven't seen. So we will actually have the ability to add affordable units to your housing stock and keep them affordable for folks who are homeless, right? Like that's the whole point, and that's where it's focused, and that's what the regulation is going to say. So you're getting around $10 million in home funds that will be coming through MDHA, and they are solely to provide rental assistance, supportive services, and to develop affordable housing for homeless. Period. That's what they're for. And so I think, Freddie, this may be part of what you were referring to, the goal of the Office of Affordable Housing, which is where these funds come from in Washington. One of the things that they want to see, because this has been working in other places, is to acquire what we call Class C motels and convert them to SROs so that they are permanent housing. So they aren't shelter dollars, right? So they wouldn't be, we may be able to use them to get folks into housing initially, but those will be turned into permanent units. And it'll be ongoing rental assistance for those units, probably through the public housing authority. Anyway, we'll figure that part out. But so that's the point. That's the goals that have been put out by HUD for those dollars. So we have the allocation amount, and we will start planning and thinking about how we can use those dollars as effectively as possible for as many units as possible. We won't be able to start spending that money until fall because of the timing for when the federal notice to spend is going to come out. But we will start planning now, so that's really exciting. Additionally, there's $5 billion coming to public housing authorities for new vouchers for folks who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. For the first time, that's a formula allocation, right? It's not a competitive process. And for the first time in that formula allocation, PIC count numbers were considered. So MDHA will get their notice of how many vouchers they get somewhere around May 10th. So I don't know what that number is going to be, but we will know soon what that voucher number is. So we are already starting to work with how that prioritization process is going to work. So lots of exciting stuff to come. So lots of good work to come in the next several months as we work to getting those funds out the door, those vouchers out the door, and getting more landlords engaged. Yeah, so lots of cool stuff happening.
Freddie, do you have another question?
Yeah, Heather, that's great. And I guess I have a couple follow-up questions. One, you've obviously been instrumental in the ESG process so far. Does the scope of our HUD TA arrangement allow you to continue working through the implementation of some of this American Rescue Plan work?
So staff already know this, but we actually got extended so that you're stuck with me for a long time now. So yeah.
Well,
dang. All right, so that's good news. Second, I mean, am I hearing you correctly saying that we will locally, let me ask it this way first, I guess. Does our allocation from American Rescue Plan support enough? Like, is this at the level where we can fully capitalize an acquisition of a hotel or hotels for this point? Like, we're going to have dollars at that level where we could potentially make a full real estate transaction and support it thereafter?
That's the hope, yes.
Okay, and so what you're saying is we will be planning that on a local expenditure level with expenditures potentially starting as soon as fall.
Correct.
Okay, good. That's good news. Thanks.
And the way that process works, so MDHA will make a plan with the community's input. Y'all will be instrumental in that. This body will be instrumental in that. And then that plan will go to the council, right? Like it does for all the entitlement dollars. So the full council will be, hopefully, I know Hannah and I have talked a little bit, like, that we can get all the right folks involved in that, right? So that different bodies can buy into that and be engaged and be excited about it, so that when it comes to the council, like folks, really can be fully behind it.
Yeah, and then I guess my related question is, this might be a scope issue. Coming back to earlier, I don't suspect that's the same as the vouchering programs that we have had available but have not pursued to date. Do you have guidance as their best practice? Like, obviously I've requested from MHED and the mayor's office an update for our next meeting. Is that something you're able to inform? Like, can you advise and provide guidance on whether we also ought to be doing the kind of vouchering process, or is this a better, or is this a both and? You know, where if we're pursuing best practices across all fronts,
I'll answer that as best as I can. I have been involved in those conversations. There isn't, y'all haven't left money on the table, so to speak, right? So right now the vouchers, I mean, it's not a piece of paper or anything, but the money that's been used for non-congregate shelter and motels is coming through FEMA under the COVID disaster declaration. FEMA also does vouchers, motel vouchers through natural disaster related events. So like, for example, from the tornado, y'all had a disaster declaration last year, and they could have used FEMA money for that, for motels, for people that needed it. I don't know if they did or not. I'm just saying that that's an example. For this, for the flooding that just happened, you do not have a disaster declaration for individual assistance yet. You may, that's still under review, but you don't have that yet for the flooding. So that until you get that, there isn't money eligible, right? There's not FEMA, it's not eligible for FEMA reimbursement. So that may change if you do get the individual assistance declaration, but right now you don't have that. Under the COVID disaster declaration, Metro could have utilized motel rooms and been 100% FEMA reimbursed for folks. Metro chose to do the decompressed shelter at the fairgrounds and the auditorium instead of doing the motel rooms. So they, in some places, have done that. The highest best practice that the CDC was recommending was motels, so that it was not, you know, just, it was safer. Metro didn't choose that option. The CDC has approved the decompressed sheltering that Metro is doing, so it's not out of bounds of what they should be doing. They're aware that it's not the highest and best practice, but it's what they chose to do through it. So that's, you know, I mean,
that's extremely helpful insight. I guess my question would be then, under the COVID declaration, as we seek to dismantle that decompressed shelter, is that money still available to use for that purpose if we decided to?
As long as the COVID declaration is in place, yes. We are also anticipating that FEMA is signaling that we don't have a lot more time with that.
Okay. All right. That's
helpful. Thank you. I'm going to try to move this along a little bit, but Treva Gilligan from MDHA would like to make a comment. So Treva, if you do that, then we're going to try to move on to our next item.
Yes, Paula, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay. I just like to clarify, I don't think from what MDHA is hearing from the HUD side of the American Rescue dollars that are coming down through the home program, I don't think we'll see expenditures by the fall. It's our understanding that, you know, we will see, I guess HUD has to do quite a bit of regulatory guidance or whatever, because this is the use of the funds that hasn't been, some of the funds are going to be used for purposes that they haven't been used before. So we're told that, you know, we're in the planning process, but I doubt that we'll be able to start expending by fall. I just wanted to provide that clarification.
The wheels of government move slowly.
Right.
Thank you, Treva. Appreciate that. All right. In the interest of time, unless there's another burning question for Heather, we're going to move on. All right. Hearing none. It is your turn, Laura Bermudez. Can you give us a fairly quick update on strategic planning?
Yeah, and I actually was going to provide an update on the committee chair meeting. I'm happy to send out the document after the fact. If Paul, you could just give me the screen really quickly. I'll just flip through these slides to give you guys some context, and if anybody has questions, feel free to ask me later. Oops. Here, well, we'll just go with the screen. So just really quickly, we met with our committee chairs in February and then extended into April because we had so much conversation. It was a fantastic opportunity for the chairs to get together and have a conversation about the work that happened in 2020, get to know each other, reconnect, and then align on the body of work for 2021. So that is what we did over those 2 days that we got together. Just give you guys a sense of some of the conversations. We covered the strategic plan and the values, and then had a really rich conversation about how well the community was doing, and the values, the community values were being represented. Sorry, conversation about how the community values that we put in the plan were being represented today. Overall, the discussion was, you know, the intent in the community is there, but we're still working on systems to support our values. So we have work, and then we have work to do in the broader community, right? People who aren't engaged in our work on a day-to-day. So really great conversation to kind of see the outcomes of where we felt like we were in each of those 5 values. We also talked about, based on the items on the strategic plan earmarked for 2021, what is it that we intend to accomplish this year? So you can see here what the different chairs wrote in. They are so much more articulate than I am. We have a lot of really great kind of vision quotes. But in summary, what we'll focus on in 2021 and hope to accomplish is, you know, robust community data and information driven by full participation of everyone across the CoC, making decisions based on that data and tangible information, greater communication and collaboration across the community, that be that with the chairs, with the Homeless Planning Council, with the broader community and our Nashville stakeholders. And then finally, a lot of conversation around making sure that equity and diversity is part of our representation and also part of the services offered. So really fantastic stuff, but hopefully this gives you a sense of what those committees are achieving in 2021, and really what you as Homeless Planning Council members should be looking for in the work of the community and of the committees. If we're not seeing these themes in the work, we should be asking ourselves, is this the right work? And having that conversation. We also had a great conversation about better ways to collaborate and support each other. So you can see here, there's some themes around making sure committee chairs are equipped with the information and support they need to succeed. Definitely some great ideas on how to formalize processes to prompt collaboration and communication. One of those, you know, we talked about just some easy things to add to every committee's agenda items. But one of the ones that we talked about and had a lot of consensus across the board is going through those committee lists and making sure at least one member is part of the planning council, so that there is that stronger connection between the councils and the committees, and that council member can be representing the committees and then coming back to the committees with information at every meeting. And then we also talked about some inventive ways to communicate a little more easily while respecting sunshine laws and need for transparency. So we're going to look into that as well. And then finally, you know, this was kind of how we finished the meeting. We asked, you know, what would you share with Planning Council as the outcome of this meeting? To me, you know, what is summarized here in their comments is the chairs are engaged. They're really committed to doing the work, and they're looking for the Planning Council, for guidance on communication, on prioritization, on the work that they're doing. So overall, it was a great opportunity to connect and refocus on 2020 and after 2020, and the first half of this year has been a little crazy. I think this was a really good opportunity for us to connect and just refocus. From a planning council perspective, I think what you guys can expect as an outcome of this meeting is some more, you know, formal structure in how we communicate what the committees are doing, some more kind of formal asks of the Planning Council to engage in those conversations, to be looking at the monthly reports and being informed on the work of the committees and keeping them accountable to, you know, sticking to the work that we said is a priority. But we've also asked the committee chairs and the committees to keep us accountable, right? If they're asking for guidance, for removal of barriers and risks that they're identifying and they're not getting that, we've asked for them to make sure that they're holding us to that account as well. So that was a very, very quick update. Happy to share this information with everybody and answer any questions whenever you have some time to digest. But I will hand it back over to you, Paula, to keep moving through the agenda.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Laura and her update? All right. Committee reports. Do we have any? No committee reports. We'll use Laura's as the committee report.
I see some hands raised, Paula. I don't know if they're waiting for you to call them.
Oh, Freddie.
Paul, I just wanted to say, after a couple of years on HMIS oversight, we did a chair transition to Stephanie Cooper. And it's, I guess I feel like at the end of that process and getting Stephanie jump-started in the role, it's great to see as we kind of take a look through the strategic plan that we made meaningful headway on most of the items that the HMIS Oversight Committee was supposed to do, including specifically getting set up to enable secure data sharing, but also getting all of the foundational documents in place. And Stephanie's already off to a great start with incredible staff support on the data quality scenario. So really, really good stuff from HMIS, and Stephanie's been along for the ride the whole way. And Will Connolly, who's on this council, is her vice chair. So we should see continued good work for the final stretch covered by this strategic plan.
Thank you, Freddie. Anyone else have comments, questions?
I have a concern. Do we have any communication or requests from the mayor's office? There's
not that I'm aware of, Charlie.
Okay.
Charlie, Hannah Davis is back from maternity leave. I think she had to leave today's meeting early to go to the Affordable Housing Task Force process. But I don't think, unless Paula tells me otherwise, I don't think she brought anything, or Judy, that she brought anything to the table today from the perspective of the mayor's office.
Yeah, I just think, thank you, Freddie. I think we just have to remember to ask the question if there's anything she needs from us, he needs.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yes, and I just want to reiterate what she says. Yeah, she apologized she had to leave, but she's here for follow-up questions, for specific follow-ups, and for anything that we need. And that you all have questions, let me know, let her know directly. She's here.
All right. Thank you, Jean. All right. Anything else under committee reports? Okay, let's move on to other business. So as I think most of you know, regardless of whether or not the pandemic is over, we are not necessarily expecting the governor to extend his executive orders allowing us to continue to meet electronically. We could be surprised, but we are not expecting that to happen, which means our next meeting is going to be in person. There's some logistical things I know that Judy is working on around that, but I would like to prepare you all for that inevitability. So any questions, concerns, thoughts around any of that? Nope.
Do you know if there's any concessions being made for people who are considered high risk, who are a part of the Homeless Planning Council?
Well, Sheila, I would encourage you to write to the governor. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, concerns, thoughts around that? I had something and it completely left my head. So it's not surprising today. I'm in that kind of headspace. So
that's my
all right.
fault. I'm sorry.
No, no, it's not. I lost it, while Freddie was talking because I was so enthralled with what he was saying.
Oh, I have something
Okay.
really quickly, Paula, and
Okay,
just,
go ahead,
it's
Lynn.
just a kudos and thank you to Open Table Nashville with defeating the bill yesterday. So
Yes. Well,
just a thank you.
let me say very clearly that we did not do it alone. And there was a lot of help. We engaged a lot of folks across the state even. So there was a bill, I don't know if any of you had followed it. It was a bill that was going to expand the current legislation that we already have on the books about camping on and that sort of thing on public property. Currently, it's illegal to camp on state property and private property, but the state decided that they wanted to, or someone in the legislature decided that they wanted to propose a bill that would ban or make it illegal to sleep or camp anywhere, including local property. So if you can't sleep on state-owned property, you can't sleep on someone's private property, and you can't sleep on the city's local property, and you have nowhere to go, they were literally going to make it illegal for you to fall asleep anywhere. So it passed the committee in the House and is still scheduled for a floor vote in the House. But yesterday, Ingrid McIntyre, Lindsay O'Connell, or no, I'm sorry, O'Connell. I was looking at you, Freddie. Lindsay Crinks, and I'm not sure if anyone else was able to testify or not. We're able to testify in front of the committee, and it was handily defeated in that committee. So we were very, very excited. These days, advocacy efforts are abundant, but the results are not always positive. But this was a very positive outcome, and we were very happy about that. So Open Table kind of took the lead on getting the word out, and we literally mobilized people from across the state to call the legislators and senators to ask them to defeat the bill, and it actually worked. So sometimes when you beat your head against the brick wall over and over and over again, you make a crack. So never stop trying. So thank you, Elena. That was nice. All right, Alex, you have your little hand up. You want to make a comment before we try to end this meeting?
Yes. I'm so happy that we're finally allowing people of Nashville and the people that works with our brothers and sisters that's on the street, like they finally get a spot on the CoC. Now, I'm not saying that for me, it's been a long time coming because they do the work that y'all can't do after hours. They do the work that really put the trust. They are literally the olive branch. I can honestly say without them and their encouragement, I wouldn't be in my apartment because they the ones that helped me like, hey, you need to go ahead and give faith and let Park Center put you into a place. So I'm so happy that they finally came to the table. But I also want to stress that they need to be a part of any meetings that we have, especially in the Homeless Planning Council. Like there should be at least 2 spots open for them, so they can know exactly what we're talking about instead of word of mouth or just reading, because that could be misconstrued or some details can slip by, and I don't want to do that. I want to integrate them as much as possible. That's the only thing I have to say.
Thank you, Alex. Freddie, did you have something else before we go?
Yeah, just we're gonna have another Metro budget cycle coming up, and I guess I would ask for one more request for our next meeting is, would Judy be willing to review the MHID budget request here at Planning Council? I think it's good for CoC and Planning Council members to understand what's being asked for and be aware that they can support that to both the mayor's office and council.
Correct. Thank you, Freddie.
Yes, of course.
All right. Is there any other business today that we need to discuss? Any announcements that need to be made? And seeing none. All right. I would, whoop, somebody? Nope. All right. Thank you all very much for your time today. As always, I really appreciate all of your participation, your thoughtfulness, your guidance that is given to our community. So with nothing further on our agenda and no other comments or questions, I would entertain a motion to dismiss. So moved by Elena, seconded by Vicky, and we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Have a good day.